It's going to be on new approaches and new perspectives to urban transitions. And we're going to be discussing emerging issues in research and innovation and the policies to achieve resilient, inclusive, and sustainable urban transitions. We'll be seeing new approaches used in research to involve local stakeholders, for instance, the role of art, or new methods of engagement and human-centered approaches to deliver on these transitions. And we're going to be seeing researchers with projects that have been funded under the Joint Programming Initiative Urban Europe on two calls, the one called Urban Migration and the ERA-Net Urban Transition Capacities, in which they will be presenting their projects, and then we will have a discussion really on how do we bring these new approaches and how do we bring this new audience and involve different actors to bring theory into practice. So the way that this is going to work out in the next pretty much almost an hour, I'm going to first be inviting each one of the speakers and each one of the presenters to come on stage and deliver just a 4-minute presentation and pitch about their respective projects. Then we're going to have a little panel discussion among ourselves. And the idea is that hopefully we will have enough time also to get questions from you. So if there's something that piques your curiosity, make sure to bring that up. We're going to be taking both questions from here at the venue in Brussels, but also questions online that our colleagues over there, Ida, are looking into. Hi. And so, yeah, they're going to be your ambassadors in this panel. So also those of you joining online, please feel free to bring any questions to our panelists. So the first one of our presentations is going to be about the project called CONTRA, Drama Labs to Handle Conflicts in Transformation. And I'm delighted to be welcoming on stage Tobias Arnoldussen from Tilburg University and Lisa de Roeck from the University of Antwerp. Welcome.
Yes, hello everybody, and we are delighted to be here and speak to you. And well, I also wanted to bring you back to this morning because Johannes said very wise things, not only about Black Sabbath, that was for sure wise, but also about having to listen to change. And that's actually what we're trying to do in our CONTRA research project. We are trying to give people who are engaging in potential conflicts over urban transitions the stage, in a very literal sense, and listen to what they make clear to us. In our research project, Conflict in Transformations, CONTRA, we investigated potential environmental spatial conflicts. That is conflicts between administrations and citizens over the use of scarce land. And we did not try to solve these conflicts per se, but we tried to find a way to explore them and to discover the hidden anxieties, maybe mistrust, perceptions of people and imaginaries, hopes for the future that fueled these conflicts. This in order to transform them, to not make them a destructive force, but also a productive force. And in order to make these conflicts appear, in order to make them take the stage, we joined forces with municipal partners, political scientists, lawyers, theater makers, and Urban Europe to create the Drama Lab. Now, what is a Drama Lab? A Drama Lab is a new take on a living lab in which we allow or we urge participants to articulate different perspectives in the conflict, to role play and to discuss challenges, to step out of their entrenched role, revealing inner emotions, dreams and fears that determine their stance in the conflict. So we use mechanics like role playing and physically doing stuff together, embodied storytelling and staging, to make these protagonists interact with one another. We connected this intervention in 4 different cities: Gdynia in Poland, Drammen in Norway, Tilburg in the Netherlands, and Genk in Belgium. Now, the drama labs are different in every location, but their purpose is the same. In order to make clear what we mean, I would like to show you a part of the Tilburg Drama Lab, and Lisa will show a part of the Genk drama lab. Here is the Tilburg one, and the Tilburg one was very hands-on. If you see the pictures, you see these installations, you see very sturdy materials, and we use these installations to make people work together and create things together. For instance, on the right-hand side, you see the climate machine. And the climate machine is a device that we constructed in which two people create a bundle of sand, a little hill of sand on which they build their house. To do that, they shovel sand in a box and create a place for themselves. However, one of the protagonists got a very small shovel and the other one got a bigger one, which resulted in one having more sand, creating a bigger hill. And at the sign of the leader, one of them pulled down on a rope and the thing flooded with water. That created the image of the small pile of sand flooding terribly while the bigger pile was standing upright still, creating the sense of flooding, but also showing how different resources create different starting positions when you try to engage with climate change, right? Not everyone is equal. Another thing that we did is the puzzle below. We created a map of the area in which the potential conflict took place. And what we saw in the interviews that we took before that was that the ideas for that area were so multiple that the whole place seemed to become cluttered with plans, with things that needed to be there. Residents also voiced that. And in order to make that visible, we urged the municipality workers, we urged the citizens, activists to create the puzzle of the area. Now, the area was looking like the area needed conflicted, and they needed to put things in there. For instance, this artifact represented the electricity power plant that wanted to expand. So they needed to give this a place. But there was a place needed for much more things, for instance, for agriculture. So we had this onion there that they had to place in order to show what they could do. Now, recreation had to come there. They had many, many places. So I offered my sunglasses as a sign for recreation, the sun, and they would create that puzzle. Now, they did so, and one of the municipality workers said, great, it all fits. But then they looked at the puzzle and they saw what a clutter they created. Everything was built full without any space. And then the moment arose when they said, well, it all looks kind of cluttered. Yeah, maybe we are wanting too much. And that's the reflective moment that we try to create with these drama labs. That is the Dutch example. I will now give the floor to Lisa for the Belgian.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Does that work? Yeah, so I will say something about the Belgian Drama Labs. Indeed, the Belgian Drama Labs takes place in the city of Genk, here in Belgium. And this drama lab plays into the development of a local valley area. This is a large transformational process of a highly urbanized valley. And our drama lab uses imagination and theatricalization of the near future where climate change is very real, is taking place. And we have an actor, a theater maker, a local theater maker who roams around the streets surrounding the valley with a wooden construction. You can see it on the picture. And she pretends to be living in this wooden construction to make clear to people who pass her by, to residents, that because of climate change, she is living there. She's acting out a certain future, and in this way, engaging with passerbyers, with residents, to talk about the problems with climate change, but also with this local valley area, with the tensions that arise because of this this transformation, because a lot of people are opposed to the plans. And with this approach, people can talk to her about it, can imagine a different kind of future, and can also voice their concerns and their tensions. Secondly, we also offer a novel approach of talking to each other with the same wooden box, offering people a space to talk without knowing who they are talking to. So we invite residents, policymakers, etc., to come to this box to have a chat, but they don't know who they are talking to. Again, to give room to difficult conversations that are otherwise not really able to happen. And thirdly, we also make space for all these emotions that arise from these different parts. So in the first part, maybe some anger or fear came up. In the second part, maybe also hope and joy. And so we end our drama lab with a celebration of the valley, a ritual where we create props together with participants and where we celebrate, but also, for example, say goodbye to parking spots that need to disappear because of this transformation. So we give room to that by this large, playful celebration. So as you can hear, this is a very, very different approach than what Tobias just presented. So that is why we wanted to make sure that this drama lab approach, it's not just one approach, there are multiple approaches possible. And then I'll go to the next slide. Yeah, no, this is the previous slide. So I also wanted to mention that we are developing a drama lab toolkit. We will present this in June in Norway, and after that it will also be available on our CONTRA website. And in this toolkit we offer a description of everything we've done in our project. It will be a toolbox for municipalities and other urban governance actors who want to experiment with these sorts of theater methods in their participatory processes. And it will not be like a one-size-fits-all approach, but more a mindset, a way of doing, of engaging with conflict and tensions through the use of theater. So if you're interested in that, go to our website, conflictandtransformations.eu, where you can find also different resources on the different drama labs. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Tobias and Lisa for this introduction to the CONTRA project. We're going to be able to hear more about the challenges and the next steps shortly. And now, already prepared next to me is Francesc Bardo from the Vrije Universiteit of Brussels, the Flemish-speaking university here in Brussels. He'll be introducing us to COOLSCHOOLS, realizing the potential of nature-based climate shelters in school environments for urban transformation. Francesc, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to present our COOL project, which is called COOLSCHOOLS. As you can see, it's a consortium, international consortium of different partners, including academic partners, municipal authorities, and civic society organizations. Okay, so a bit what is the challenge at stake in our project? So what motivated us to start this project? It's basically, well, as you can see, or you could see from the title, our project deals with the role of nature or the role of nature-based solutions in school environments. And the main reason for that is that there is a mounting scientific body of scientific evidence showing that the benefits of children's contact with nature from different perspectives, also for their development. And actually, as you can see also from this newspaper article that I got earlier this month, there is also a need from children. They want to spend more time in nature. It's also related to the global policy goals like the SDG 11, which calls for universal access to green space, especially for vulnerable groups like children. And there is also another relevant challenges, as you can imagine, which is the impacts of climate change on children, and especially in schools, and what is the role of nature-based solutions for climate adaptation in school settings. And as you can see, many schools are now facing heat waves and the fact that many schools have to suspend classes because of that. And also we see more and more evidence that children cannot follow classes because of heat. So that's an issue. I mean, here you see an recent article from Southeast Asia, but it's also happening here in Europe. So what we are doing, just very briefly. So we aim to assess the transformation capacities of nature-based solutions in school environments. And we do that from different perspectives. So you can see in the slide, we take into account cognitive and behavioral development of children. We take into account biodiversity. We take into account accessibility and equity aspects, also quality education, inclusive governance, and safety, and other qualities of these nature-based solutions. We try to do this, of course, involving different stakeholders. As you can imagine, the first is the school community, so teachers, children themselves, parents, but also we try to engage with other relevant stakeholders, like landscape architects, planners that are involved in the transformation of schoolyards, for example. And actually, what we basically built for this assessment is we built on ongoing processes of a school transformation, especially schoolyard transformation in four cities. As you can see here, all of these cities have started already since some years transformation projects of especially the schoolyard. So in Barcelona, this is the climate shelters program. In Paris, it's called the Oasis schoolyards. Here in Brussels, the Opération Recréation, which is going to transform almost 20 schools. It's still now in the implementation phase. And Rotterdam, that they also have a lot of experience on transformation of the schoolyards, considering this nature-based approach. Okay, so moving just very quickly to some of the insights of this project, because we are still, in the process of, let's say, implementing this project, so we don't have all the results, but we have some that I want to show. But first, I wanted to do a very short exercise, very short, no worries, with you. And if you can just close your eyes for a moment and just imagine that you are back again in the playground of your primary school. So just picture the playground of your primary school. Okay, so are you picturing it? Okay, so now those of you who remember this playground or this schoolyard as a space mostly green, so with trees, with vegetation, maybe with a vegetable garden, can raise the hand. Okay, so that's not so bad. Okay, so you are the lucky ones, because what we are seeing from okay, it doesn't work now. Yeah, okay. What we are seeing with our assessment in these four cities is that most primary school environments are still mostly gray. That means that they have not a lot of tree cover or not a lot of vegetation cover within the schoolyard, also within the school settings, also around the school settings. And this is especially happening in socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods. Except in Paris, which is a kind of exception, because in Paris it's a very specific case where the most well-off people normally live in areas that are not so green. But in the other cities, we see this kind of socioeconomic inequalities in terms of access to school green space. Another interesting preliminary finding of our study is that, at least in Barcelona, but also in Paris, we have similar results, is that the species richness in terms of plants and fauna, we look at here the arthropods, is generally higher in the schools that have transformed the schoolyard into a green, in a nature-based space, than in the nearby urban park. So this is quite surprising for us that was really the case. So that's something that we didn't expect, and apparently it's happening in some schools. One of the last things that I want to mention is also about the use of these schoolyards as outdoor learning spaces. So especially since COVID, there are more and more schools that want to do lectures, or they want to do lectures outside in the outdoor. And we see that, so beyond physical education, and we see that this is happening more often in the schools that have transformed their grounds than in the classical gray schoolyards. So you can see here some of this evidence. And the last one, if it works, yeah, and okay, that was the last one actually. So the last one is just to say thank you for your attention. Here you can see more information. We are launching a MOOC this week for teachers who want to transform the schoolyard. So if you are interested, just have a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesc. And the last one of our presentation is going to be done by Joanna McIntyre from the University of Nottingham on the art of belonging, exploring the potential of cultural placemaking for social inclusion of young forced migrants. Thanks a lot for being with us, Joanna. Take it away.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Art of Belonging project. So this was in response to the urban migration call, and the project looked specifically at forced migration and the impact of forced migration on places in Lund, in Sweden, and Nottingham within England. And we were looking at particularly at young teenage forced migrants, so refugee and asylum-seeking teenagers, some of whom were unaccompanied in their new places. Now, for refugees and asylum seekers, there's a sense that once they've reached a place of safety, they feel that they're going to have a little bit more control over their life. And of course, what often happens is that they have very limited control in terms of where they're allowed to go, where they're allowed to live, the movements across their new space. At the same time, the places in which they are resettled, there are communities there who have no control over the fact that people are moving into those spaces. So we're very aware that there's a lot of anxiety that the young people are having to navigate, and most of them actually, we found, don't navigate that. They tend to stay in their homes, especially those who are yet to be placed in a school context. So what we were interested in was to think about place in terms of a relational space. How could we help these young people to build a sense of connection to their new place? And how could we help people in those new places to feel a sense of connection with these newly arrived young people? We also wanted to consider the fact that these young people are very likely to stay and become future citizens. So we took on the theoretical idea of art as placemaking, so art and creative activity as being a way of making place, of becoming part of place, of altering place, of leaving your mark on a place, of being valued in a place. And linked with this idea of valuing, we also were thinking about the cultural capabilities that these young people were bringing into our cities. So what we were interested in looking at was how can we understand how to make these spaces inclusive for young people. The methodology was quite complicated initially because we had a lot to think about in terms of ethical dilemmas that the cohorts we're working with presented to us. And so just to cut a long story short, what we did is we engaged with NGOs that were working on the ground with refugee and asylum seekers and asked their advice, and they became part of an advisory group as we devised our methodologies. When you're waiting for legal citizenship, you really feel like an outsider in your new place. So what we wondered was, could we think about this idea of cultural citizenship? And on the slide are some definitions of what key stakeholders in the city thought cultural citizenship might mean. And we decided that this notion of cultural citizenship was something we really wanted to focus on. And an idea that's linked with cultural citizenship that was already in place within one of the cities, within Nottingham, was the idea of the cultural rucksack programme for young people in schools in Nottingham. And what that involved was schools working closely with arts and cultural organisations across the city to put on a programme that meant that by the end of their school career, they would have gone to the key cultural spaces in their city in the hope that they would feel cultural citizens in that city. And we really liked this idea that they were trying to ensure that young people grow up feeling connected to and valued by their city. But of course, for the participants we're talking about, they've missed those opportunities because they've arrived as teenagers. And so we decided to think about, could we adopt the principles of the cultural rucksack and sort of fast track it for the new arrivals in Nottingham and Lund, bearing in mind that we thought their cultural rucksacks were not empty when they arrived. And so we put on a programme in each city of arts and creative and cultural activity that took young people into the creative and cultural spaces in Lund and in Nottingham. And really importantly, what we did in those spaces was got them to make things, got them to be creative in those spaces. So they weren't just tourists in those spaces. And the places that we took them to were places that one would consider to be elite cultural spaces, but also those that were not elite cultural spaces that teenagers hung out in and did things in. The project culminated in a public exhibition in 2 iconic venues in each city, and we invited members of the public to be shown around the exhibitions by the young artists, by the producers of the artwork. What we found was that this programme of activity actually was a really cost-effective way of bringing about connections for these young people. And what we really realised was that the long-term benefits, we haven't done the political economy analysis of this yet, but that the long-term benefits of this, according to our problem owners in each municipality, were going to be huge in terms of economic savings. They recognised that they were going to have an enhanced positive mental well-being, that they were less likely to get involved in criminal activity, and so on and so on and so on, because they were making connections and feeling safe within their city. We found that arts and cultural spaces are really strong catalysts for social connection between the public and our young new arrivals. But we also felt that there were significant barriers that still needed to be negotiated beyond the life of the project. But the Cultural Citizenships Programme can enhance social connectedness, and they did this by demystifying and challenging stereotypical representations of young refugees, by creating opportunities for bringing together people from the host community with the new arrivals, and encouraging empathy and a desire to help. I've already mentioned the positive mental health aspects of being involved in the programme, and through learning how to be artistic, there was also a tool for the young people to use when they were on their own, back in their accommodations. And the public exhibition showcased the development of skills and personal efficacy for the public to see that what these new young people were bringing into the city. So the project helped the young people to feel that they were part of the city. So one of the quotations there, I understand the history of the city and I am part of it now. And there was this sense they were making a mark and making the city more beautiful. And our observations showed that when they interacted with members of the public, there was a sense of reciprocal respect and understanding. And so our argument is that by recreating these kinds of programs and introducing new arrivals into the cultural fabric of the city, we're going to bring about long-term benefits to those spaces within the city.
Excellent, Joanna. Thank you very much. You can stay with us. Thanks a lot. And if I can invite then my speakers back on stage, Francesc, Lisa, and Tobias. Excellent. So yeah, you can join me here. All right. So thank you very much for these presentations and for presenting what I think all of them really inspiring projects tackling some important societal issues. And this is a question that I wanted to start with and to bring with you, because all of your different projects tackle some big societal challenges or issues in the urban transitions, from integration of migrants and refugees to climate change, to the increasing polarization that we see in our society. So have you found any particular challenges when it comes to engaging with some local stakeholders? Any resistance that you found? What can you tell us about that? And we can start with our CONTRA representatives.
Yeah, maybe I can answer this one.
Yes, with the microphone.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yeah, actually, yes, it's not always easy, right? Because theater is experienced as a bit of elitist, and yeah, is it a venue that everybody comes to? Well, we have tried to make those drama labs known in all the regions of the area, and with all the communities that live there. So we did try to be inviting and as open as possible. And we also created within the drama lab an exercise where everybody who participated would not only bring a chair to the discussion for themselves to sit on, but also a chair for the guest that's not there. Mm-hmm. Who would be the guest that should be there but is not yet there? And so we let them articulate also who should have a voice in the drama lab, but is not now there. And we try to contact them as well for a next iteration of the drama lab. So we do try to broaden it to very different publics.
I love this. Guests who should be there but are not there yet. I'll circle back to this question. Lisa, something you'd like to add?
When it comes to resistance, indeed, as Tobias said, theater, it's not the easiest thing to sell, I think, sometimes to municipalities as well. And we see that, for example, in the Norwegian Drama Lab and in the Polish as well. It's you don't have to immediately frame it as theater. To use the methods from theater, you can just say like, okay, we're going to do different participatory practices and integrate them in these ways as we described. But you don't have to say, oh, it's a drama lab or it's this. With theater, you have to play. If you frame it like that, people are very scared. Often we noticed. So I think that's a way of tackling that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And Francesc, what can you tell us about engaging schools, engaging local communities? And have you seen maybe any differences in the cities that you're implementing the project? Particular, no need to name and shame, but have you detected potentially any differences?
No, I'm not allowed to speak about the specific schools, of course, but no, I mean, I think in our project, what we are doing is try to build with ongoing initiatives that I was mentioning. So schools that are already engaging with transformation of the schoolyard, for example. So they, in a way, I mean, when municipalities in these cities, they start implementing this kind of projects, I mean, if they don't get the schools on board, then it's very difficult to that these projects have any success, right? So what we are trying to do is to build on these schools that are already engaged in a way, and sometimes we have to also to try to contact or try to engage with other schools that have not gone through any transformation, and sometimes it's more difficult because, I mean, as you can imagine, the schools, school teachers, school directors are quite busy people that sometimes they don't really have the time. But in general, we see a kind of positive reaction to engage with the project. And I think that also it's what we see is that those projects of transformation of the schoolyard that have been more successful are the ones that have let's say, taken a more inclusive governance approach, in the sense that they have really invested on the participatory process. So they have really engaged with the teachers, with the children, with the parents, with other stakeholders that are, let's say, on the school community. Because at the end, the design cannot be top down of a schoolyard. That's quite clear, right? So yeah, that's a bit experience.
Definitely, thank you. And Joe, please.
I think that we initially started with a problem owner in each municipality, and we kind of initially thought they would be gatekeepers for us to the different groups that we wanted to work with. And actually that wasn't the case. It wasn't so straightforward. And the biggest challenge we had was actually building trust with the participants, the young participants themselves, and also with the NGOs and voluntary organisations in each city, the churches, the faith groups that support refugee and asylum seekers. They needed to trust that what we were going to do was going to be not putting them in harm. And we also needed to build the trust with the arts and cultural organisations, especially those who are going to host the exhibit, because they were kind of thinking, oh, what they're doing is no good, because these were not artists. These were kids who'd never done anything like this before. And in the end, what we decided was needed was a kind of coordinator that could link those two different groups of stakeholders together, who the stakeholders trusted because they spent time and invested in building a relationship with them.
I would then like to pick up on this point and ask all of you, how have you built trust then with the different stakeholders in order to engage them into your projects? How difficult was this process? How did you approach it? What can you tell us about that? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, maybe I can say something about that. I think for our project, what has been important, and it's not always easy to find that, but really local theater makers who know the context of the city, of the municipality, of the tensions that are already there was, I think, an important lesson. Also, so now we presented these drama labs. That's more of like the outcome, but what came before were these very in-depth analysis of the context of the site. We did interviews with multiple stakeholders, observations, to really also get to know the local context, and in this way build trust with them as well. And I think that's important if you want to also talk about conflicts, talk about tensions and resistance. You really need to spend a lot of time on the ground, I would say, to get to know the place and the people, and in that way build trust.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else you would like to add? Francesc? Yeah.
Maybe just say that with the schools, yeah, of course, you have to build trust. You have to find the moments for engagement. Also with children, of course, you have to go through a number of things. But for example, our colleagues from the University of Antwerp who are kind of implementing the work package on health benefits. So they are basically trying to distribute questionnaires on the impacts on well-being and cognitive development on the schools that are more green and the schools that are less green. Sorry. So what they did, it was very difficult sometimes to get the consent from parents. So what they did is trying to do some short videos explaining what is the research about, what are going to be the benefits for the school themselves, and they were implementing this here in Brussels. So they were doing this, of course, in French and Dutch, but they also did a video in Arabic to reach also the families that they will not speak currently French or Dutch, and that was very successful, and they got a lot of positive response from parents through these videos. For example, that's a
Can I just add one thing? And the other thing that we took a deliberate decision was we were not going to ask the young people about their reasons for leaving their home and their experiences of their journeys to their place of safety. And that was a really important decision that we made.
Right, thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Tobias?
Well, maybe only that indeed you need to have a foothold on the ground, so you need to know exactly what is going on there, and you need to show your face also at regular participation meetings, so that people get to know you and they are not, they're not squeamish around you, and to conduct, of course, also the drama lab in a very open manner. Tell what you're going to do beforehand and make people feel at ease with a new research method, which is always difficult. It meets with feelings of them not knowing what to expect, either the residents or the municipality workers. So yeah, but getting to know one another on a deeper level beforehand is, I think, also crucial.
And then maybe speaking up on that, since you've mentioned the research method on itself, these seem to be all of your respective projects quite innovative methods in which you're approaching your research. So I'm very keen to hear from you if you see generally that there's a shift in a way that we are conducting research, especially in terms of urban transitions, or what do you think perhaps is still holding research and academia back from more innovative, hands-on, creative approaches? What do you think? Yeah, Joe, please.
I think that one of the key lessons I learned was that we went to the participants expecting to learn from them, not to observe them as kind of like specimens. We wanted to learn from them and with them. We felt they had something to bring that we didn't know, and we were genuinely interested in those. And through the arts methods, what that does is it takes the attention away from the conversations that they're having with you, because they're really engrossed and focused on the art, and they're being valued for what they can produce. And then they say things that just come out naturally because you've built that trusting environment. So I think it's kind of like you want to be involved in a kind of participatory way rather than just treating them as kind of exhibits. You know, it's kind of like if you want to learn from them, you have to really come to the ground with them and work with them.
Definitely.
Can I ask, Ed, maybe? Also in the theatrical method is, of course, very much embodied. It's also less cerebral. So instead of having the verbal as the primary conveyor of information, you can with theater also see how people actually react in different situations, not only the actual, but also the imaginary. So it breaks open a whole new area of research, actually. And what I do see is that people are very much interested in the use of theatrical methods. And I think it's gaining a foothold in research much more, which is actually a very interesting development, a very exciting one.
Any other thoughts? Yes, Lisa.
Maybe to add to that, indeed, very interesting, but also sometimes challenging, because the contexts of researchers and artists are often quite different. And adding to that, the context of municipalities and the way they work is also quite different than, for example, how a lot of artists and theater makers work. So bringing that all together might be a challenge. in these sort of research projects. So that is maybe something that is holding researchers sometimes back to engaging with these sort of projects. Also because of the outcome is often quite unsure where you're going to land. And that's also the beauty, I think, of these sorts of projects. But again, for researchers, also for municipalities, often quite difficult if you don't know where you're going to end up. You have to have a lot of faith indeed in the process.
So it's worth taking the risk, I would say. Any final thoughts, maybe? Or?
From our project, so the question was about the innovative approach and the research or on the transformation of the project itself, because I think it's, in our case, it's more interesting to look at why some of these interventions in the schoolyards, for example, they don't are, let's say, more transformative or more radically transformative. And I see that there is also this, I mean, this morning we were talking about this resistance curve, and there is a lot of resistance from some schools, from some parents on transforming the schoolyard in such a kind of radical way, like using this concept of nature-based solutions. And I see that, I mean, there are questions of safety, of course, but I see also a lot that what we see in the schools that we are working with, that they don't want to also, I mean, there's still a lot of emphasis on the, let's say, on the sport fields in the schools and the football-centric approach on the schoolyards, and this is it creates a lot of resistance to change the schoolyard. And there are many stakeholders related to this that they don't want to change because of that.
All right, interesting. Then perhaps one last question before I hand over to any questions from the audience. What are perhaps some potential audiences, stakeholders, target groups that you feel that we should involve more, that we haven't really involved yet when it comes to researching urban transitions and urban development? Maybe to pick up Tobias's words, what are some guests that you think should have a seat at the table and they might not necessarily have it yet?
Well, there is always a bit of a language gap sometimes, of course. So the people we want the voices to hear are oftentimes the one we hear least. So indeed, it takes special effort, I think, from the municipal parties, but also from the researchers, from everybody actually, to find multiple ways to invite people into the conversation. And yeah, for us, that was actually one of the bigger challenges, and we try to address it also in the toolbox which we created.
Thank you.
Maybe if I can add to that, and that's, I think, also one of the starting points of our project, people who are really against these policies, because oftentimes during a lot of these participatory meetings, there is not always room for dissent and contention and conflict. And a lot of times it's quite solution oriented and we all go in the same direction. And it's important, and we've learned it also this morning, we need to listen to the people, or we need to engage with people who are against all these policies, who are not believers like maybe we are. And I think, for example, theater methods can be a way of bringing those people also to the table. I'm not saying we're going to convince them, but we're going to maybe have a way of listening to why are they opposed to something, why are they against certain policies.
Thank you.
I think that it's really important to consider, if we're trying to bring to the table or to the chair those who are not often invited, there has to be a really valid reason for them being there, and they have to. There has to be a sense that they're going to benefit from giving their time to those conversations, to those discussions. And I think sometimes we'll just make an assumption that people will want to be involved in those conversations. But if you've always felt marginalised, you've always felt disenfranchised, you're less likely to feel that you have a seat at that table. So I think we have a lot of work to do to break down those barriers.
Sure. Thank you.
I mean, in our case, I think we try to bring the most important actors in this kind of transformations. Of course, what is challenging sometimes is you see the priorities, for example, from teachers compared to children, which are sometimes, very interesting, but not always aligned with those of parents or teachers or other stakeholders. So that's, that's the beauty of it.
Thank you. Now we still have some minutes left in case anyone in the audience has any questions. So looking up to see if anyone would like to ask a question, please raise your hand if you do. And we're gonna hand over a microphone. Nobody wants to break the ice. It takes one brave person. All right, we have 2 brave people sat here at the back, and then we're bringing you to the front.
Thank you. My name's Julia. I work on Net Zero Cities. I was curious if any of the insights or results from these projects, which are very interesting, have been channeled into policy recommendations, or if that's occurred, if that's planned, but what are the kind of next steps in terms of turning some of this learning into wider policy discussions? Thanks.
Thanks. Good question. Yes.
I think I'm in a quite advantageous position because our project's finished. So the last 14 months we've been working exactly on that, and it's been different in Lund and in Nottingham. In Lund, the municipality have been very keen to find out how they can support future iterations of similar projects, and have invested in that through a program called Arts Inclusive, which I think has now run 3 times since the end of the formal funded project. In Nottingham, it's been a slightly more difficult story because the municipality has just been declared bankrupt, has no money, and also politically things have really shifted, and it's actually quite difficult for some high-profile people to publicly be saying they support forced migration, and that's actually raised its own challenges. So what's actually happened is those arts and cultural organisations have now come together and formed an Art of Belonging group, and they have devised a pledge, and they've signed a pledge, and they are working together to make so from the ground up with the NGOs and with the voluntary groups to ensure that the programme keeps running in different forms.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to?
Yes, maybe from our side, our project is still ongoing, but yeah, there is the idea is to also produce outputs which are, let's say, more policy relevant besides the research outputs, but that's going to be more like by next year. And of course, we are also trying to involve. I mean, I mentioned the MOOC, for example, for teachers, and there's going to be more outputs related to that. Also, actually, the cities that are involved in the project, they have already a lot of experience in the school year transformation, for example, and all these kind of guidelines are already published or they are available online, like from Paris, from Barcelona, for example.
Thank you. And Tobias?
Yeah, our project is also still ongoing, but well, we have two ways of actually, we're thinking about institutionalization. So we are thinking about how these kind of more theatrical forms of participation can fit within existing participation processes. So we do think about how they can be more institutionally embedded within the spatial planning system, and also by submitting or by supplying a toolkit towards municipalities who want to engage with this new form of dialogue and theater. They can use it, experiment with it, and also in that way we try to get a foothold with more municipalities which might well embrace this kind of participation.
Thank you. We had another question here at the front. We can raise a hand so that they can find you. Yeah, it's over here at the front. Thanks, Ida.
Yes, in fact, you have nearly answer to the question. The question was following the idea of who's missing at the table. I wanted to ask if, for example, urban planning department or because we can try to go to people, but sometimes it's in the institutions that you have no contact, in fact, and so that's it.
Anyone has something to add?
Maybe that indeed, you mean urban developers should be involved as well, right? Or yeah. Yeah, so that's the idea. For example, in all the drama labs, we also previously talked to urban planners who were involved with the different cases, and they are all invited as well to the different parts of the drama lab. So for example, in Norway, there were planners there, and they also mentioned that, okay, this was this way of engaging with each other. This was very different than what we normally do with, for example, people from municipality, where we have normal, like very formal contacts. And this was a nice way of breaking breaking that very formal context and engaging with each other in a different way, but completely agree that they also have to be involved as well. Yeah.
Anything else to add? Otherwise, we move to a question here.
Thank you. So I would like to ask the panel if you could give just one advice to a consortium or to a project that would like to use these innovative research strategies and techniques, how to present it to municipalities in a way that would be valued by them and understood, not just like as something creative and quirky that is going on, but as something that actually creates value and input that can be evaluated in another way than just economic revenues or like, you know, numbers that we can actually see, but that goes beyond how to actually, you know, present it in a way that is understood and valued. Yeah.
Thank you. Good question. So one piece of advice.
That's a difficult one, but I mean, I understand that what you want to, that your question is related to the, I mean, the other languages beyond economic valuation, let's say. I mean, I think that in our case, in our project, for example, the municipalities are not, I mean, they are basically interested more in terms of public health. So the language of public health, I think it's very important at the city level. So the benefits for children well-being, for example, that it doesn't have to be translated into monetary terms, right? So that's something. And also I think that it's important to also, I mean, align with their priorities and their kind of policy mandates in this kind of projects. So that's why we're building on this initiative that they were already there. So I would say that that's an important point, yeah.
Thank you.
Not sure if it will answer your question, but I think what is important here is that when it comes to, for example, climate change, because all the cases that we were looking into are related to climate change policies and the resistance that there is to them, to those policies. Oftentimes, municipalities, they know what the technical solutions are. They know what needs to be done, but they don't know how the difficult conversations on these solutions, on these technical issues need to happen. So I think in our project, what we offer is other ways to have these conversations, other ways to bring those tensions more to the foreground, because they are there. And oftentimes, policymakers maybe, but also researchers, we choose not to engage with the tensions or with the conflict, but the conflict also has value. And we try to elucidate that and also show like, okay, we can not only value the conflict, but do something with it. And I think that is the added value of our project.
So,
it probably comes as no surprise if I tell you I'm a professor of education, that my answer is going to be around young people. And I think that what we have tried to do since the project is to work with primary parliaments in cities and directly with schools and with the Schools of Sanctuary movement, and to support them in the work they're doing. And the kind of the key message, the key takeaway is, surely we all want to build societies where every individual feels valued and feels that they can make a contribution. And I think we just got to be kind of cognizant of the fact migration isn't stopping anytime soon, and what's happening obviously sociopolitically isn't stopping, but also climate change. We're going to see a new wave of climate refugees very soon, and unless we're ready for that, then it's just going to bring more division. And this is a way of building more cohesion.
Thank you. And Tobias, anything you'd like to add? Your final piece of advice?
Well, also a final piece of advice, maybe not to be too squeamish about thinking before others, oh, they will not like this idea or it's too much out there. Actually, they also see the urgency and the need to break open barriers. So maybe they're more willing to think out of the box than you think. The approach we had was generally received quite positively. So people actually did see value in it. And you need to find the people that also like to think out of the box. But if they do, they're very enthusiastic. And they also they are willing to think along with you. We've actually, had quite some positive experience also in that.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm afraid that we need to move on to the next session, but I think it's been really, first of all, I think really inspiring to get to know the different projects and the respective approaches that you have all taken into tackling important challenges that so many cities are facing, but also the behind the scenes work, no? How much effort you've put into building trust with these different audiences, into also believing in the project, no? As Lisa mentioned before, like you don't know sometimes like what the outcome of taking a more creative or more innovative approach is going to be, but you still need to believe in it and carry on. So I would say that with these pieces of advice and with this final takeaways, we can wrap up this short panel discussion, but it's been great having you here on stage. So thank you very much, Joanna, to Francesc, to Lisa, and to Tobias for having joined us this afternoon. Thanks a lot.